Hey, this is Greg Berger, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on this week's episode of the Cinema Geeks,
we take a look back at the first half of our summer predictions.
We find out who had the best feeling when it came to Transformers the last night.
And we bring you our second half of summer predictions.
All that and more coming up on today's episode with the Cinema Geeks.
Alright, it's time for another episode of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo, and joining me, as you heard in the intro, is Hard Candy Mandy.
Yo.
Movie Revolt Dan.
How you doing?
Not too bad. And Fridley Sent.
Hi.
And today we're bringing you another episode where we get to predict the future. But before we get into our predictions of the July and August films, we have to look back and see how well we predicted the first half of the summer films. That's right, looking back at May and June and seeing if we were on pace with each other like we were with the spring predictions where we all got the same amount of points, or if we started to separate from the pack a little bit. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the actual results, Amanda, how are you feeling about your May and June predictions? Do you even remember what any of them were?
No. And I don't know how I feel because I don't remember what my predictions are.
Okay. Dan, what are you feeling? Do you think you predicted the first half of the summer pretty accurately?
I think I did okay. I'm a little worried regarding. I know there's a lot of movies that did a lot worse when it came to Rotten Tomatoes than I expected, so I'm a little scared about that. So.
And the thing that we're going to have to see based on the spring predictions, because back in the spring when we made our predictions, we all did phenomenal when it came to box office. I think we missed one prediction out of all of the box office predictions. So we were like 24 out of 25 when it came to the box office, which was pretty remarkable. And then when it went to Rotten Tomatoes, I think we were like 22 wrong out of 25. So we did terrible when it came to the Rotten Tomatoes for spring. So we're going to have to see if that stays true or if things change here when it comes to the summer, the first half of the summer. We're talking about films like The Mummy and Alien Covenant, King Arthur, Pirates of the Caribbean, Guardians of the Galaxy, Transformers, and that fair. So those were some of the May and June releases, and we'll get into some of the more specific ones that were part of our predictions. Let's see. Let's start with Matt. Your first prediction for Pick to Click. So we'll do the box office again first and see if we can continue our good streak here of picks to click, things that made money, made back their budget, etc. Your first pick was Baywatch. Baywatch made about $57 million domestically, and its budget was $69. That's not a pun. Their budget was $69. But Baywatch only made $57, so we're starting off on the wrong foot, Matt. That is not enough to get you a point for Baywatch. It got terrible reviews out the gate, and I think that kind of hurt some of its power at the box office in week 2 and week 3. So no point for Baywatch. Amanda, you went with the softball with your first pick. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 currently has made $384 million at the box office. Do you think that's enough to get you a point?
I damn well hope so.
Yes, that surpassed its $200 million budget. Pretty hefty budget, but a lot of money being brought in from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So you get the first point of the day for your first pick to click. Dan, your first pick to click was Cars 3. Cars 3 currently has a domestic total of $125 million against a budget of $175. Now, granted, it just came out less than 2 weeks ago, but I don't know how much of a chance it's going to have to get that extra $50 million. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but we do have competition now with Despicable Me 3. As weeks go on, do you think it's going to have enough to make $50 million over the course of its remaining box office days?
Considering it wasn't really well received, and there's going to be more and more competition this month, and also with August, unlikely, which is super surprising. So
yeah, I'm surprised it didn't make more than that. It's underachieving as far as I believe, and I thought a couple people. I was reading some positive reviews and whatnot, but it just didn't have the traction it seemed like on the third chapter of the Cars franchise. My first pick to click was It Comes at Night. Trying to go with a film that didn't have much of a budget. It was only a $5 million budget and so far it's made $13 million. So we're talking about real small numbers, I guess, but it has almost tripled its budget. So I guess that's enough for a point for me. My second pick was All Eyes on Me, and this was almost too close to call. Its budget was $40 million. I don't know how it got a budget of $40 million, but that's what its budget was, and currently it sits at $43 million domestically, with maybe the chance of bringing in $1 or $2 more million here in the next week or two. So just barely made back its budget domestically for All Eyes on Me. Amanda, thoughts?
Did I get skipped?
Nope, we're coming back around. I'm snaking around. Guardians of the Galaxy, remember? We talked about it? Okay, all right.
You
Back
just did
with
2 in
us.
a row, and I'm like, I didn't think
I'm
that.
snaking back around.
It's freaking me out.
Throwing you off.
Don't do it.
Dan, you went with a double animation pack there. You went with Despicable Me 3 as your second pick. Despicable Me 3 only had a budget of $80 million. That is a tiny budget for an animated film, and it's already made $100. So even though it's only been out for a week and a half or so, it's easily made back its budget. So any surprise that Despicable Me 3 has outperformed Cars 3, I guess you could say, even though it's a little bit behind it, it's had much less time.
I'm more surprised by about the budget, because considering you have pretty much the same cast for 3 movies, you think that alone would be nearly half of that. So I don't know. I guess when you have half your cast are minions and they don't really speak, it's makes for a cheaper film maybe.
Yeah, and I think their voice work for the minions is all provided by either the director or the writer, the producer, somebody that's like in creative control of the film. So they're probably not taking too much of a budget out of that. So yeah, Despicable Me 3 doing good at the box office. The third chapter is apparently not wearing out on, or fourth, I guess, if you want to consider it, is not wearing down on people yet. Pirates of the Caribbean, Amanda, your second pick to click. Remember that?
I was a little sketched out by that one.
I was wrong with the budget. I must have had like a moment where I like to flip numbers or something, because I had said that the budget for that movie was like $320 million. That's incorrect. Its budget was $230 million.
Still a lot.
And it's only made 166. So almost 70 million short for Pirates of the Caribbean. No point for you, no matter how you look at me. Matt, we already gave away your second pick. It was Cars 3, so no point for you either on Cars 3. So far off to a little bit more of a rocky start than we were last time. We're 4 for 8 out of the first 8 predictions. Let's get to the negative. Let's see if we were better at predicting the negative. Matt, your first bet to bomb was King Arthur. How are you feeling?
Oh, I feel very comfortable with my bombs.
King Arthur made $38 million against $175.
That's no good.
That is beyond no good. So easy point for you there. Dan, you also had King Arthur, so an easy point for you on that one. Very wise predictions there. Matt, you also had a pick in common with me. We both had Pirates of the Caribbean. Obviously, we gave that away with Amanda's pick to click, so we will take the points that Amanda did not get for predicting that one to be a bomb. We'll keep the dual picks going, because Dan, you and I also shared a pick. We each had The Mummy. The Mummy made $76 million against $125. So almost $50 million short for The Mummy to get back its budget domestically. So far, doing fabulous on the bets to bomb. That's 2 points for Matt, 2 points for Dan, and 2 points for me. Amanda, how you feeling?
I'll know when I hear what my picks were.
Your first pick was Lowriders.
Oh, yeah, come at me.
Which had a budget of $1 million.
Oh, no.
And made 6.
Damn it.
So not getting a point for that one. And your other pick was the one that you threw me off with, Everything, which I forgot was a movie. It had a budget of $10 million. It made 33.
What the hell?
So no soup for you for Lowriders or Everything. That means it's time for our wild card picks when it came to the box office. I said Alien Covenant was going to be the highest grossing film of the franchise.
Ooh.
Yes. That is my reaction as well. It's not the best. It's not the second best. Not the third best. And not the fourth best. It is the 5th highest in the franchise. And I think there's only like 7 or 8 films total. So it is not good. I think the only film that it beat out was Alien 3 and like some of like the Alien versus Predator or something like that. Like Did not beat Prometheus, did not beat the first Alien, did not beat the second Alien, and that's not even adjusting for inflation. So Alien Covenant, nowhere near the top. I will lose that point. Dan, you had Baby Driver as the best grossing film for Edgar Wright. How do you feel about that one?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
The highest grossing Edgar Wright film prior to this was Scott Pilgrim at 31 million, and Baby Driver in basically its first opening week is at 39. So took out Scott Pilgrim, and it is currently the highest grossing Edgar Wright film to date. So wise pick there for Dan. Amanda, speaking of Baby Driver, your prediction was All Eyes on Me would beat Baby Driver.
Oh, snaps.
So right now there's a $4 million difference. All Eyes on Me is ahead by $4 million, but Baby Driver's only been out for a week.
So are you going to take the point away from me later on?
I'm going to take the point away from you right now.
What?
There's no chance Baby Driver doesn't make at least $4 million in the next week.
You know what, sir? I don't like it.
Matt.
Baby Driver was a much better movie than All Eyes on Me, though.
Correct. Matt, your wild card was that Mummy would not be the best in that franchise.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
People hated that movie.
Not me.
Like, the trailer looked terrible.
Not only was it not the best in the franchise, it was actually the worst. So it is the worst grossing film out of all of the Mummy films.
Nice.
So you not only got it right, you got it real right. So with the box office picks, that means I was 4 for 5. Dan was 4 for 5. Matt, you were 3 for 5. Amanda, you got Guardians of the Galaxy right. Maybe you'll do better with Rotten Tomatoes. I'm getting the look of death. All right, let's go to the Rotten Tomatoes picks. Let's start back with Matt again. Matt, you had Baby Driver being fresh, as did I. Current Rotten Tomatoes score for Baby Driver is 85%. So that is good for both of us. Actually, I'm sorry, not 85%, 97%. I flipped them. It's 97%. So it's even higher, which is still good for a point. Dan, your first fresh pick was The Big Sick. Any idea of what the early reviews for that have been?
Pretty positive. It's kind of a cheat, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty positive.
Yeah, Baby Driver's at 97. The Big Sick is right now at 96. So all of those films doing real well when it comes to the critics. Amanda, your first fresh pick was The Beguiled, and that is currently at a 77. Just barely, but that's high enough.
Oh, jeez.
So we all get our first fresh pick correct. Matt, your second fresh pick was Snatched. Snatched currently has a 35%.
That's not high enough.
That is not even half of the amount that you need there. Amanda and Dan, you both went with the similar pick for your second fresh pick, and that would be The Book of Henry. How you feeling, Amanda?
I don't think very good.
No, The Book of Henry got panned almost immediately. The Book of Henry actually would have been a proper pick for Rotten because it's at 23%.
Yikes.
And my second pick was Okja, which is currently sitting at an 85%.
What?
So 85% for Okja. All right, let's go to Rotten Picks then. We all, except for Dan, had Amityville Awakening as our pick. Amityville Awakening, for like the 6th time in its production, has been pulled from the schedule.
So it didn't even come out?
It did not come out. I looked it up yesterday to figure out why there was no scores anywhere. And if you look at the history of this film, it's had like 7 different release dates so far. And like right at the beginning of June, like June 6th or something, they pulled it from its release date, which was within those 2 months. So I don't know what's going on with that, but none of us can get points for a movie that didn't come out, I guess. Unless we just consider that it's that bad that it didn't come out. I don't know. But Dan, you actually had Amityville in your Rotten Versus pick. So regardless of how we count it, none of the 4 of us can score a point for the prediction that involved Amityville. So I guess it's a wash for that.
This is the biggest travesty to happen to Amityville in the history of Amityville. I can't think of a worse occurrence.
I guess that's what happens when every film in your franchise has been rotten. Like the movie gods make it so that you can no longer release films. Let's get to the second picks then, since we're all kind of down one in this category. Matt, your other pick to be rotten was Wonder Woman.
That was a bad idea.
As we reviewed, pretty universal praise for Wonder Woman. It's sitting at a 92%, real high. So you did the flip, just like they did with Book of Henry. Amanda, your other rotten pick was My Cousin Rachel. Currently has a 75%.
What?
So we're picking the wrong categories.
Bro,
again.
I am sucking so bad at this right now.
I wasn't going to say it, but Dan, your other rotten pick was Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants currently sitting at an 85%.
What world is this that we live in?
So Book of Henry, 23%. Captain Underpants, 85%. That's how that worked out. And my other rotten pick was The House with Will Ferrell, and that is sitting at a 20%. So that is actually rotten. So only 1 point scored for those ones, except for Dan. You had one more rotten pick. You had Transformers Last Night being rotten, and that is correct. I'll give the number in a little bit, but you were correct that Transformers Last Night would be rotten. All right, so Dan's wild card for the rotten, his versus pick, cannot score any points because it involves Amityville. My rotten versus pick was Despicable Me 3 beating Cars 3. Look at this for Rotten Tomatoes. Despicable Me 3 has a 62%. Dan, you surprised it's that high?
For Despicable Me?
Yeah, 62%.
I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I really can't say.
Despicable Me 3, 62%. Cars 3, 68%.
Ooh.
So I am wrong on that one by 6%. So no points for me. Cars 3 actually is the better Rotten Tomatoes pick, I guess, even though Despicable Me 3 is the better box office pick. Amanda, you had a rough night beating Snatched. How do you feel?
After seeing Rough Night, not good.
Rough Night currently has a 48%. But as we mentioned, Snatched is down at 35.
Okay.
So you get a point for
Oh.
Rough Night beating Snatched in the battle of under 50%ers. Matt, your other pick was Despicable Me 3 losing to Minions in a Rotten Tomatoes versus battle. We already said Despicable Me 3 has a 62%. Minions, though, had a 56%. So Despicable Me 3 actually beats Minions by 6%, even though it lost to Cars 3 by 6%. That's a lot of close numbers. Either way, neither one of us get points for that. So, for the Rotten Tomatoes picks, I was 3 for 5. Dan, you were 2 for 5. Amanda, you were 2 for 5. And Matt, you were 1 for 5.
Yeah.
As for our featured film for the first half of the summer, it was Transformers The Last Night. That's what we had to predict, what it was going to make and what its percent was going to be. Amanda, you went with 16%. Matt, you went with 15%. I went with 20%. Dan, you went with 30%. Correct Rotten Tomatoes percent for Transformers The Last Night. Somebody hit it on the actual number. It is currently at a 15%.
Woo.
Amanda, you missed it by 1%. Her mouth is open in a state of disbelief. As
I'm looking at my notes here. I had written 16% in mine, so that means Amanda must have guessed before me. So there's
Yes.
no way I'm guessing before her on this next one, huh?
So you both would have been off by 1%, I guess, with your original percents, but that's pretty good. As for box office, Amanda, you predicted 200 million. Matt, you went 205. I was at 235, and Dan, you were at 300. Currently, Transformers The Last Night has brought in domestically 109.
Oh.
Now, it's not done. It's only been out for a couple of weeks, but with the slate of movies about to be released in July, Dan, is there any chance this movie gets to the 200 million mark?
Maybe globally, but that's about it. Yeah, I was never so happy to be wrong.
It would have to double its amount that it's made so far to get there, and that's pretty hard to do when you lose, I think it lost 60% from its first week and to its second weekend. and that's pretty dramatic. I mean, usually you lose like 40, 50, and it lost like somewhere in the 60% range over those first weeks. I mean, even people that defended those other movies are bashing this one, and that says something. So I think we're going to give that one to Amanda. Amanda, you had the lowest guess at 200, and I don't think it's going to get there, so that means you would be the closest. So overall, if you add this with our points from the spring, which we all had 6 points, this is what the current standings would be. Matt, you would have 11 points so far, 6 from the spring and 5 from summer 1. Amanda, you would have 10 points. So you had 6 from the spring and you gained 4 more. Dan, you did the exact same that you did in the spring, 6 points each. So you're sitting at 12 points. And I had 6 points from the spring and 7 points from this last one. So I would be at 13. So that puts me at 13, Dan at 12, Matt at 11, and Amanda at 10. So we're each separated by 1 point. Amanda, what do you think?
I don't do good at this. I don't.
You're about to have a whole new slate of predictions.
Let's hope I can redeem myself.
All right, so we're going to flip the page to look ahead now at, well, before we look ahead, just real quick, let's start with Amanda. What are your thoughts on some of these films that you saw over those 2 months? So we have the likes of, let's see, you saw All Eyes on Me, It Comes at Night, Pirates, The Mummy, Transformers, Alien. What do you think of King Arthur? What do you think of some of these films?
I really liked King Arthur. The Mummy I had fun with, and I thought it was a really good setup movie for this dark universe that they're doing. So regardless of what everybody else thought, I liked it. All Eyes on Me was shit. It was not good. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. I really liked. I loved the ending. It was great. Baby Driver was just as awesome as everybody's saying it is. Okja, I don't have good feelings about. There was a lot of stuff in there that, you know, it was really heavy-handed, and there was a lot of things I didn't want to see happen to this fucking animal. And it was outrageous and crazy. And some of the characters were too over the top. Jake Gyllenhaal, I'm looking at you, bitch. Let's see.
Rough Night?
Yeah, Rough Night. Oh, I was really disappointed with that also. So yeah, I think there were some ones that I really enjoyed, but then, you know, opposite end of the scale. I don't think there was any movies that were middle of the road for me.
Dan, I know you saw Cars 3, which none of the rest of us saw. What was your take on that and some of the other? Are you surprised at some of the reviews that have come out for some of these more anticipated films that we had at the beginning of the year?
Well, Cars 3 I thought was okay. I mean, I think the first Cars movie, like, I think what that franchise tends to get kind of knocked for is just like they throw in like some lowbrow humor here and there that's unnecessary that kind of brings it down. Cars 3 was enjoyable enough. I thought it was an improvement from the second one, which is not saying a whole lot. But I really enjoyed what they did in reference to the character that Paul Newman played and how like he kind of had an impact on this most recent one. And but yeah, I think the Cars movies kind of get a bad rap in a little bit. They're not Pixar's best, but they have their moments.
Gotcha.
I was kind of surprised the Book of Henry got crushed as much as it did. I have not seen it, and I've not really read much beyond just basic like headline reviews of it. So I don't know what went so wrong there. But also, you know, I did see Guardians and enjoyed Guardians, and I was like the last person in the world to see Wonder Woman, and I liked it. I wasn't in. I don't know. Like I wasn't over the moon with it as many were. I don't know. It's because I saw it so late in the game that the anticipation was too high, but it just kind of fizzled out for me at the end. Wasn't the biggest fan of how they kind of the whole Ares thing came about, but overall, I thought it was, you know, it's been kind of a lackluster summer to be honest. But I feel like it's like a stepping stone, and then I'm really excited for some of the movies we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and usually we go over, I didn't do it yet, but usually we go over what the possibilities were for the month as far as what your predictions could have been. So just real quickly, the movies that made the more money than the budget, there was about 8 of them. So Guardians of the Galaxy, Snatched, Lowriders, Everything, Wonder Woman, Captain Underpants, It Comes at Night, All Eyes on Me, Baby Driver, and Despicable Me 3 are the ones that for sure made money. The box office bombs, though, were aplenty. King Arthur, Alien Covenant, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Baywatch, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Mummy, Cars 3, The Book of Henry, and Transformers: The Last Night. So a lot of the big ones there with like Transformers, The Mummy, Pirates, Alien, King Arthur. So not good for a lot of those kind of quote-unquote blockbusters. Any surprise at that, Matt, or is that kind of what you expect when you get some of these franchise films that are on their third, fifth, eighth film in the series?
I feel like the further you get in, the harder it is to even guess. Like, you know, if you think about it, like, well, Iron Man 3 was technically, like, the 7th or 8th one in that franchise, right? And, like, it did real well. And then, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean is, like, been on a constant downward slide, like, since the second one or whatever. But, like, the further out you get, the smaller the pool is to compare to. So it's harder and harder, you know, because how many franchises get 7, 8, 9 movies?
True. Well, these days, no, it seems like more and more now every year. But Amanda, one thing that we were wondering about when we kind of looked at this was, and even when we were looking at it way back at the beginning of the year when we were trying to do our yearly box office predictions, we were wondering, would this signal the end of some of these long-running franchises? We had stuff like Fast and the Furious, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Transformers specifically that were having, you know, 6th, 7th, 8th films. Seeing the money that Pirates of the Caribbean made, you know, 160 versus 230, seeing that Transformers for the first time is not going to be at least a domestic box office moneymaker, maybe worldwide, do you think this signals the end for a couple of these franchises, or what do you think?
I would say I hope so for Transformers, but I don't think that's the case because isn't there already a Bumblebee movie in the works?
Well, there's always a lot of stuff in the works, but sometimes performance at the box office can put a halt to certain plans. So do you think we'll get less Transformers films than were originally planned?
Yeah, I would say so. Unless this Bumblebee movie is comes out and is super ridiculously awesome. But I think that this will signal the end of the Pirates of the Caribbean. I think it had a wrap-up feel to it. And, you know, based on box office numbers, I don't think they would try to, you know, have some kind of resurgence in the story.
All right. And then looking at the possibilities for Rotten Tomatoes, there was actually quite a few possibilities for both Rotten and Fresh, which sometimes it's a few and far in between. Sometimes there's only a couple that are Rotten over the course of the month, but actually quite a few to pick from both angles. So let's start with the negative. There was 7 films you could have picked as Rotten. We'll start with the highest rated of those, 23% for Book of Henry. That was the highest rated Rotten film for the 2 months. Then we have 3 tied at 20%. Diary of a Wimpy Kid was 20%, Baywatch was 20%, and the Will Ferrell film The House was 20%. So all Rotten films there. Then we drop down to 17% for All Eyes on Me, and rounding it up at the bottom, 2 movies tied with 15%, The Mummy and Transformers: The Last Night. Go back to you, Dan. Any surprise outside of Book of Henry at some of the numbers for those Rotten films?
Not really. I kind of wish I picked the wrong kids movie. Clearly, someone was Wimpy Kid, not Captain Underpants. So, no, they all kind of beyond Book of Henry. They all seem pretty straightforward.
All right, let's see if there's any surprises with those that could have been fresh, because we actually had 9 films that you could have picked as fresh, and you would have been correct, starting with the closest to the border there, My Cousin Rachel at 75%. Then we jump up to 81% for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Then up to 83% for Megan Levy. I don't remember which way they pronounced that. And then we go to 85%, 2 of them, Okja and Captain Underpants. Then up to 87% for It Comes at Night. Then into the 90s, 92% for Wonder Woman, 96% for The Big Sick, and 97% for Baby Driver. Amanda, any surprises as to the fresh picks there?
I'm surprised that Okja did better than Guardians. That's kind of stupid to me. But
you put it so elegantly.
Yeah, it's stupid. So stupid. But
so Dan, is that kind of how you thought though, with Big Sick and Baby Driver being the top dogs, or surprised that Wonder Woman is coming in at 3rd?
I mean, I'm a little surprised that Wonder Woman's kind of an enigma, because being a DC film, you're a little worried about going in. So it being that high was a pleasant surprise for sure. But The Big Sick and Baby Driver did seem like ones that were probably your best bet to be, 2 of the better films of the summer.
Matt, do you agree that Wonder Woman should be more highly rated than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
No, probably not. Like, I don't think either one of them is quite as good as the critical reception has been. I think they're both great movies. They're solid movies. I don't regret seeing them in theaters, but I don't know that either of them is really a 90%, let alone 2 and 3 or whatever.
Right. All right, so those were the films of the first half of the summer. Let's now, though, turn the page to the second half of the summer, July and August films. We have quite the variety of films coming up. We have some of those continued blockbuster films, but maybe some blockbusters that had a little more promise than the likes of Pirates of the Caribbean, King Arthur, Transformers, etc. We also have some of those films that we talked about in our most anticipated films, and then we have just some weird stuff coming out too. So let's see where everybody falls with their predictions for the second half of summer. Amanda, we're going to start with you. What is your first pick to click for the second half of the summer?
I need to go with some easy ones here, okay? So I'm going with War for Planet of the Apes.
All right, so you think War for the Planet of the Apes is going to make some money, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else have War for Planet of the Apes as a pick to click? All right, Matt, what's your first pick then?
I went with Annabelle Creation because horror movies are free to make, apparently.
I thought that exact same thing, Matt. And I actually looked at the numbers. The first Annabelle film had a budget of $6 million and made 85.
Yeah, that's insane.
So I'm just going to say that sounds like a recipe for success, and I will also put down Annabelle Creation for a pick to click on my roster of picks here. Dan, what's your first one?
I thought I was being creative with that one. I also have Annabelle as one of my early picks.
Okay, so now I'm worried. Okay, I'm the only one that didn't have it, and I do super shitty, so...
So we should all feel good, right?
My other pick to click, I feel like Lucy did really well a few years ago. John Wick was really great, and I think like Atomic Blonde's gonna kind of continue that success. So I picked that as my next pick to click.
So Dan, we're gonna be getting both points or none of the points because I also have Atomic Blonde as my second pick. I think it only has like a $30 million budget. So that means basically it has to do similar to the likes of like Baby Driver or something of that effect. Like it needs to make $40 million to be a success, and I think that can easily happen with the especially her coming off of the hype from Mad Max Fury Road, and people want to see her in this kind of role. And I think the marketing's been decent so far, not been over the just slamming you with over and over again. I mean, I have seen my share of trailers for it, but I'm with you. I think that one's going to be able to make back that $30 million pretty easily. Amanda?
I'm going to go with Spider-Man Homecoming.
So Spider-Man and War for the Planet of the Apes, and you're worried about us picking Annabelle.
Yeah, man.
All right. Matt, what do you think as far as your second pick?
Oh, man, I went with a slightly riskier blockbuster with The Dark Tower.
All right, The Dark Tower as your pick to click. I actually am going to counter you because that's one of my bet to bombs. If my research is correct, I think it has about a $60 million budget, which isn't crazy, but I'm looking at the films that came out here in the first half of the summer. So if Dark Tower has a $60 million budget, The Mummy, which has a lot more name recognition as far as a franchise, and Tom Cruise, only made 76. Alien made 73. So those are two films that had a little bit more recognition, and they were just barely able to get over the 60 mark. So I don't know, is Dark Tower going to be able to have the pull to get up past those films? What was your thoughts with Dark Tower? You think people are just ready for seeing Idris Elba kick some butt?
He looks so good in that movie. But really, I think it's a hard comparison because those two are more horror and this is more action. Like I know it's impossible to think that it's gonna do as well as Guardians 1, but I think it's closer to that. Like in just how it looks. Like it's a little more serious, a little more intense. And the books have been coming out for like 30 years. Like The Gunslinger is in probably my top 3 favorite novels of all time. Like, I think there's a lot of people who are fans that are gonna go see it that you might not have expected.
Amanda or Dan, what do you think on the Dark Tower's prospects of making back that $60 million budget?
I wasn't sure, so that's why I kind of stayed away from it. Because I'm like, I could see it really going either way, just because it. I think this is one that's going to be made or broken based upon how the reception is. If it's anything less than stellar, I could see it not doing well. But I also feel like I think we certainly have a market of fans right now, or movie goers that really want something fresh and original. And even though it's based upon something else, the fact that it's not Dark Tower 7. Maybe that'll get people into the theater. So,
what do you think, Amanda?
I also had it as an option for both my pick to click and bet to bomb. I didn't know what to do with it in either of these, so I'm going to save it for my wild card.
Okay, that means I've given away one of my bets to bomb. Matt, what is one of yours?
Oh man, let's go with this one first. I went with this Death Note movie that's coming out. Because, like, no anime that's been made to live action in America has really done well, right? Like, you got, like, Avatar and Speed Racer and, the slightly bigger one that came out just recently.
Ghost in the Shell?
Well, yeah, that one. I mean, that one didn't make its budget back either, though, did it? Like none of them do well.
Yeah, the trend could continue with Death Note. That's definitely a possibility. Amanda, what's your first bet to bomb?
I'm going to go with Kidnap, a little Halle Berry movie.
Hasn't this movie been previewed like for 2 years now? I swear I saw a trailer for this at least a year and a half ago.
No idea.
All right. So
that's why I'm putting it on bet to bomb, because I've never heard of it.
No love for Halle Berry.
No.
Dan, what's your first bomb?
This is one I think it has a chance of being like a great movie that finds a second life, but I don't think many people are going to see it in the theaters just because it looks so different and out there. And Valerian and 1,000 Some Planets, it's a forever long title. A Luc Besson movie, of course, a guy who gave us Fifth Element. Fifth Element also didn't do very well but was actually, people love it, and I could see that happening again with this, just because I think it might scare some people away with how kind of out there it might be. So I'm going back to bomb.
I actually also have this as a bet to bomb. I just think it's coming out at the wrong time of the year. I hope it doesn't. I hope it does well, but I think this should have been like either a March or like an October release or something like along those lines. For it to come out in this 2-month period with the likes of Spider-Man and Dunkirk and War for the Planet of the Apes, I just don't know if it's going to have the ability to compete. So I'm with you. I think it might be tough, and that budget has to be high with the special effects and the sci-fi nature. So I'm with you. I don't know if Valerian City of 1,000 Planets is going to be able to do too well during this first theater run here.
I also have it as my second bet to bomb.
All right, so no love. Not saying we want it to bomb, but no thoughts of it succeeding at the box office, I guess, from the panel here.
I think it looks dope, and I'm going to see it, but I don't know if it can make its budget back.
Matt, what's your second pick?
Oh man, mine is this movie on the list called Leap, which I think was actually called Ballerina in another language.
Yeah, animated film.
Yeah, real serious looking animated film, which I don't think is gonna do well here.
So it might not translate to American audiences, is your thought?
Yeah, it doesn't look bad, but I'm watching the trailer and I'm like, why is this animated and not just live action? Like, it's very weird.
Interesting. Dan, a pick that nobody else has had for your second bomb?
Yeah, I'm going to go out another movie that I didn't know existed until we started doing this, and mostly because it is starring John Travolta, and that's The Life and Death of John Gotti. It doesn't have a huge budget, but I feel like it's going to make even less than that. So
I can't believe that's an actual movie.
Yeah.
That's starring John Travolta as Gotti. Like, that just... I don't know. Is he writing and directing or producing that? There must be some type of pull that he has to be able to do that. All right, so it's time for our box office wild cards. Amanda, you said you had something to do with one of the ones that we were talking about. So what is your wild card box office pick?
I'm going to say that Atomic Blonde will outperform The Dark Tower in the box office.
More love for Atomic Blonde than The Dark Tower. All right, that would support a couple of our picks as Dark Tower bombing and Atomic Blonde succeeding, so I hope you're right with that. Matt, what's your wildcard pick?
So I'm super in love with this Valerian movie, and I don't know how it's going to do, but I think for my wild card, I'm gonna say it's going to do better than similar looking movie Jupiter Ascending.
Some more box office money for Valerian over Jupiter Ascending. Those are similar looking as far as the marketing and some of the early looks. So interesting comparison there. Dan, what do you have for wild card?
I have that Logan Lucky, which people are saying, it's like the Ocean's 11 of like NASCAR or what have you. It will actually, it's Steven Soderbergh's return from his 2-year retirement. It will actually make less than all the other Ocean 11 films. So.
Okay. So Logan Lucky making less than all of the Ocean's 11 films. Are we talking about all of the modern Ocean's 11 films?
Yes, all the modern Ocean's 11 films. All the other ones directed by Steven Soderbergh. So.
Okay. I was going to say, because if you're just saying it's going to make less than some of the movies that came out in 19 whatever it was, that would be hard to do. All right. So interesting pick there, Steven Soderbergh comparison. For my wild card, I'm going out on a limb here. I went back and forth on if I was going to say that it was going to where it was going to fall within the character's filmography, but I wanted to get Spider-Man in here somehow, and I wasn't sure if it was. For a while, I had it making more than both the Amazing ones, but less than all of the original 3. But I decided to, heck, let's see if Marvel can work its magic. I'm saying that Spider-Man is going to make more than any other Spider-Man movie ever. I think that's a little crazy, but I'm just going to go with it and see if people are going to go crazy for Spider-Man like they did once upon a time when Tobey played him. So, all right, that is it for the box office picks. Let's get into some critic reviews and some Rotten Tomatoes. Start with the fresh picks. Amanda, what film is going to be certified fresh?
I'm going to go with Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan can do no wrong.
Bro.
All right, so one pick for Dunkirk as being fresh. Matt, what do you got fresh?
Yeah, Dunkirk.
2 picks for Dunkirk. Dan, what do you got?
I'm going to go with my most anticipated movie of the year. I'm going to go with the Apes film, of course, War for the Planet of the Apes. I think if that's not fresh, then my heart's gonna hurt. So.
I did not. I battled with where I was gonna fit War for the Planet of the Apes, whether I was gonna pick box office, Rotten Tomatoes, or what I was gonna do. I'll have it coming up a little bit later. But I went with something else for my first fresh pick. I'm gonna go with Detroit. I just think there's going to be some buzz behind that film. It was on a lot of people's most anticipated list, and I'm hoping that it's going to actually live up to those expectations and not disappoint like we've had with quite a few films so far this year. So Detroit is my first fresh pick.
Let me
Amanda, what?
jump in and also say Detroit for my second one.
All right. Why do you think Detroit's going to be fresh in your mind?
Oh man, I watched. So here's the thing about Dunkirk and Detroit, both of these D movies. I watch the trailers and I go, that one's going to be up for awards. I don't know if I can watch that movie. Like, they're both so intense. Like, the acting even in the trailer, the acting in both of them are like very good and like very obviously good. But like, oh man, that Detroit trailer is like makes me squiggly. I don't like it. Like. I'm glad to see Boyega. Like, I haven't seen Boyega in anything except for Star Wars, and so like seeing him in that, like going like, oh man, I hope we get some of that in Jedi. Like, that looks great.
There we go. Dan, have you seen the trailer for Detroit yet?
I have not. I been somewhat not avoiding it on purpose, but I have not suck it out specifically.
Amanda, have you seen that? Or what did you think of the early looks for Detroit?
Yeah, we've seen it a bunch of times. I actually had Detroit, and then I wrote over Dunkirk. I only had one room for a D-word movie, and so it had to be Dunkirk.
Gotcha. All right, so Matt's you've given both your fresh picks, right?
Me?
No, Matt.
Oh.
Your name's not Matt.
Yeah, that's both mine.
All right, Amanda, what's your other fresh pick?
Ghost Story.
Ghost Story. A lot of buzz from some early festivals that was released in, so you think it's going to live up to when it gets a more limited or wide release?
I think some snooty pants people are going to go critique this, and they're going to like it.
All right. I don't know how to respond to that. Dan, what's your other fresh pick?
I'm going to go with the Glass Castle, coming from the people that brought us Short Term 12, which was a great film. Similar cast, and hoping that, unlike the Book of Henry, it will, live up to expectations and not be awful. So, or at least
That was
get reviewed poorly.
Glass Castle was one of the ones I had right down to the wire. I was going with Glass Castle or Wind River, and I ended up going with Wind River from Taylor Sheridan from Hell or High Water. That film got very well received last year, and I'm hoping that he can follow up with Wind River and get a similar reception. So, but I definitely was highly considering Glass Castle. Hopefully both of those films do not disappoint. All right, let's switch it up. Let's go negative. What's going to be rotten? Matt, tell me.
Oh man. So I was looking at this list of movies that you sent us to choose from, and I'm like, Nut Job 2? What's Nut Job? And so like I didn't look up a trailer. I just searched Nut Job on like Rotten
Ew,
Tomatoes.
why would you do that?
How'd that work for you?
I just Googled up Nut Job, and I did not like what I saw, so I assumed that this one's gonna do terribly.
I am with you 100%. Nut Job, the original film, has a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's not a good number.
And most people don't like, sequels usually drop down a little bit. And if Nut Job got 10%, how in the hell would Nut Job 2 score higher than that? So it has to be rotten, right? It has to be.
Has to be.
I just real quick before anybody else gives their rotten picks, if you look at the list of films that are coming out in July and August, I feel like this is the easiest 2 months I've ever seen to pick rotten films. I feel like I could pick like 7 of them. Even though there's a lot of films I'm really anticipating, there is some crazy stuff coming out these 2 months. Amanda, what's going to be rotten according to you?
A movie called Naked. It's a Marlon Wayans, basically Groundhog Day with Marlon Wayans, and he's just waking up naked in an elevator before his wedding day.
Yes, there's a movie that she just described coming out like that. So, like I said, there's a lot of crazy stuff coming out. Dan, what do you got as one of your rotten picks?
Well, mine two have actually been picked already. I went Naked and Nut Job 2. I actually saw the trailer for Nut Job 2 when I was when I saw Cars 3, and first, it's the entire movie. The trailer for Nut Job 2 is the entire movie, and it just made me cry and die a little on the inside. So I'm like, are they making another Nut Job movie? They are making another Nut Job.
The first one did so well. I think the first one did somehow make like $60 million or something, but that's still not very good for animated film. 10% for an original animated film, and you're going to make a sequel. All right, Matt, what's your second pick?
Oh man, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't look into every single movie. I didn't feel like this one was nearly as easy to grab the Rottens, because I see a lot of 40% movies here.
Yeah?
Yeah. But one movie who actually honestly didn't look terrible, but the trailer made it look like it was like done on a shoestring budget. And it was just a little weird, was Undercover Grandpa. Like, the premise seems kind of fun, and it's got James Caan, but, like, that trailer looks like... I mean, I could have done a better trailer than that. Like, how is this a major motion picture?
Yeah, that was one I was a little perplexed at as well. Amanda, did you have another rotten pick or not?
Yes.
What is it?
It is First Kill, and it's got Bruce Willis and Hayden Christensen in it. Hayden Christensen. I can't talk. And I can't breathe either.
What is Bruce Willis doing with himself?
That's why I picked this, because he hasn't done anything great in a while.
If you look at the last 5 years,
bring this down.
He starred in an action film with Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. He's now with Hayden Christensen, and I swear he was with somebody else that was just as equally as weird like a year or two ago as well. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, there's no way a film with Bruce Willis and Hayden Christensen is received well. I just can't see that happening. For my other one, I went with a movie called The Last Face, which is being directed by Sean Penn. And if you remember, last time we saw Sean Penn in the director's chair, he gave us something called The Gunman, and that scored a 17%. So I'm thinking he's equally well received with his next directorial film with The Last Face. So that is my other rotten pick. How about some battles? Amanda, who's battling in your Rotten Tomatoes arena?
I'm going to say Annabelle Creation is a better Rotten Tomatoes score than Wish Upon, the other horror movie coming out here.
So more people loving Annabelle?
Yes, sir.
All right. I know nothing to base that off of because I don't.
I think that Wish Upon looks like a cooler movie, but I know that there's like a huge following for Annabelle, so I'm just kind of trying to bank on that.
All right. Matt, who's battling out in your Rotten's arena?
So, I watched that Kidnap trailer, and I'm like, this looks like a crappier Taken. So I'm gonna go with it not doing as well as Taken at the
All right.
Rotten Tomatoes website.
I like it. Dan, who's bailing out in yours?
I'm going to talk about movies I think might be good. I'm going to go Dunkirk. I wanted to bring that in somehow. And, thinking another iconic World War II film, obviously a different story, but I feel like it's the one that's gotten the most comparisons to Dunkirk based upon the trailers. So I'm actually going to say that Dunkirk will do worse than Saving Private Ryan when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes. Saving Private Ryan has a 92%. I say it's going to actually fall under that. So.
Okay, so it still could be positive, but just not quite up to Saving Private Ryan's level. All right, I am also going to go with a movie I feel like is going to score very well. I said I had to find a way to get it in somehow, and this is where I'm going with my War for the Planet of the Apes. I'm actually going to say War is going to end up being the highest Rotten Tomato score out of all Planet of the Apes films, whether it's the modern or the classic. The highest classic was the original, which scored a 90%, and the two in this modern trilogy have had 81% for the first one and 90% for the second one. So that means the two highest films in the franchise are 90%, and I'm actually going to say War is going to be higher than that. So I don't know if that's my anticipation or my desire or want for that film to be that good, but I'm hoping that it's going to be the best score that we've ever seen for Planet of the Apes and really put an exclamation mark on this modern trilogy. All right, so that means it's time for a film. I know what everybody listening is like, wait a second, they just went through a bunch of predictions for July and August and ain't nobody talking about the Emoji Movie. So let's talk about the Emoji Movie, because that's a thing. It's happening. You can't stop it. Emoji Movie is coming out. We have to predict the actual box office number and the actual Rotten Tomatoes score. Let's start with box office. Amanda, are you supposed to go first or last?
I'm going last.
All right, Matt, you have to go first this time then. What's your box office prediction for the Emoji Movie?
Oh my god, what do you compare the Emoji Movie to? It like
Angry Birds.
Angry Birds,
The
sure.
Apocalypse?
Yeah, more like that. Like
I would have compared it, like, if you would have asked me this question like 5 years ago, I would have been like the Lego Movie, but you can't because that did so well. So maybe Amanda's right. I like Angry Birds. I didn't think about that one.
Can you look that up for me?
Angry Birds did like 110 million. I looked Angry Birds up because that's the only thing I could think of, because it's like, I don't know, it's a phone movie, I guess. Because yeah, what do you compare it to? Like in my notes, I wrote 90 million, but I like Transformers King Arthur got like 109 million. Like, is it gonna even get that close? I'm gonna go with 90 million, but I don't know. Hopefully less.
Dan, what do you think for Emoji Movie?
I think it has curiosity, and I think this is gonna maybe hit a certain generation of kids, and maybe they're gonna eat it up and love it. I don't know. So I think it's gonna not nearly get to the level of Lego Movie, but kids watch some awful things. Speaking from experience, so I'm gonna go. I want 120 million, which I think is not, which is pretty. Honestly, when it comes to animated films, they're making Nut Job 2, as we talked about. That did well, So I feel like the Emoji Movie, just based upon blind curiosity and a lot of hate watching, will make $120 million.
See, I I like that, the hate watching aspect. Yeah, animated movies do make some money. I want to know though how much. I haven't been paying attention to the marketing. How much is the poop emoji being used in the marketing, and is he involved in the film? Because people go crazy over the poop emoji. There's stuffed animals.
They have a whole family of them. It's in the trailer. I saw that trailer before Cars 3, which again shows you the audience they're going for.
All right, so I think they're going to hit their audience, because I guarantee, based on all the little whippersnappers I saw out watching fireworks of the 4th of July, that is the kind of kids that America seems to be raising, ones that love the poop emoji. So I'm going to go higher than both of you and say 140 million.
Whoa.
Still a relatively moderate number for an animated film. I mean, if an animated film comes out and seems like they don't make 200 million, that's a failure. But I'm gonna go with 140. Amanda, that means you're the only one that's left.
I think I need to do Price is Right style here.
Don't be a douche.
I'm gonna go 95 million.
She's trying to get retribution, Matt.
Matt beat me on 1%.
All right, so relatively low numbers for the Emoji Movie. We're not thinking it's going to be a box office juggernaut for sure. But how well will it be received from the critics? Matt, what do you think?
So is this just gonna be all of us guessing a number close to 10%? Because like seriously, it's the Emoji Movie. Like I'm
Nut
going.
job score 10%. It's got to be better than that, right?
Yeah, better. It's by 3%. I'm going with 13.
All right, 13% from Matt. Dan, what do you think?
This is tough because I feel like, again, people are going to go in this with like super low expectations. So if it's like not the worst thing ever, maybe it'll get like a lot of 3 out of 5s or something like that, where it'll skate by. Not a lot. So I'm going to say 25%.
All right. Right on the border of being rotten. I will go with 20%, right in the middle, because I think what Dan's saying, like, it could have that, like, if anything's redeeming about it, people might be giving it that 3 out of 5, but I feel like there's just people that understand that the reason, or that this movie existing is a bad thing for the world. So I'm at 20% for me. Amanda, what do you think?
Oh, I'm gonna go 16%.
Really?
Yes.
3% higher than Matt.
He beat me by 1%.
4% lower than me.
But I got it right on the nose.
I know.
All right, so no love for the Emoji Movie. But let's look at the whole scheme of all the films that are coming out over these 2 months. There's a lot of indie or smaller films that had a lot of anticipation. There's some big blockbusters like we talked about. Start with you, Matt. What are you thinking about these 2 months? How does the outlook look, and is there anything that you're looking forward to or that's going to get you to the theater?
Oh man, I'm not gonna go to the theater as much as I'd probably like. Like I'll definitely see Spider-Man. I hope I see Valerian. But I'm not even up to date on like the Planet of the Apes, so I can't even go see that if I was super interested.
We can solve that.
Yeah, maybe I need to come over to some weekend here and watch that middle one that I haven't seen.
No, Wednesday they're showing all 3 of them in the theater back to
I
back.
cannot do that.
He's trying to get me to do it. I don't like.
I'm trying to convince somebody to do it.
I think if I were free, I think I'd do it, but there's no way my life could swing that way.
Gotcha. So Valerian and Spider-Man, the 2 highlights for you?
Yeah.
All right, Amanda, what do you think? What are you thinking about the 2 months, and what's got you interested?
I think there's a bunch of stuff that I do want to see, but there's a ton of like weird ass limited releases going on too. I'm most excited for like Girls Trip, Valerian, War of the Planet of the Apes, Spider-Man, of course, and Atomic Blonde. I think that Hitman's Bodyguard looks funny, but I think that's like a rental. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna go to the theater to see that. Dark Tower, I'm interested in, but I feel like I want to read all these books, but I don't have enough time to get through 11 books or whatever before this movie comes out. So maybe
7.
I'll see how I feel. Oh, 7. Okay. Well, I feel like I'm going to see how the movie goes for me before I read the books. Then that's because that's a huge commitment.
All right, Dan, what are you looking forward to most during these 2 months, and do you think it's going to outdo the 2 months we just ended with?
Well, that won't be difficult, so hopefully so. I mean, as long as War for Planet of the Apes is good, I'll be happy. Like that's all I need. That's all I need is for that to be good, and I think it will be. I do think there's some good chances for some of these small indies to do well. Like I'm really hoping that the Glass Castle will do well, and I think there's a huge variety of types of movies coming out. Like Valerian, you have this crazy, intense sci-fi fantasy. Dunkirk, a World War II drama, which you don't get very often in the summertime. So that's great to see. You also have, like I said, War for Planet of the Apes, Spider-Man, which I will be seeing, which I'm super excited about. I was a little lukewarm on it, but hearing all the reception of it so far seems to be really positive. So I think I don't necessarily know if there'll be enough to redeem the summer. And then you have really huge mysteries when it comes to something like Dark Tower. Maybe that'll be great. Hopefully it will be, but who knows? It could be like this summer's Pacific Rim that like makes people like in super excited, or it could just be like another bomb that we've seen very often this past year. So
I'm definitely looking forward to Dark Tower 2, but I'm worried that it's going to be like this year's Crimson Peak, where it's just something that everybody was super excited about and then ended up just not working for many people. But I'm definitely intrigued by that. The one I'm looking forward to the most is easily War for the Planet of the Apes. I mean, that was in my top 2 or 3, I think, for most anticipated of the year, right behind Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So, I mean, definitely looking forward to that one. I've heard a lot of good things about A Ghost Story with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, and that's also an interesting pairing that you always got to be interested in seeing what they have in store. I think Dunkirk, I'm always up for, another Christopher Nolan film, so definitely on board with that. I'm intrigued by Atomic Blonde, but my hopes aren't necessarily real high for it. But like you, Dan, I'm hoping for a couple of those other ones to really pay off with the ones that we were anticipating, like Detroit, Wind River, and The Glass Castle. Those are definitely, at the beginning of August, some small films to look out for. I haven't seen any of these, but I know you've I think seen all of them, Dan, and you've been high on the other ones. But The Trip to Spain, you've seen the other ones in that series, correct?
Yeah, they're very enjoyable. They get released on BBC, I believe, as TV series, and then they get kind of condensed like a 2-hour film for America. I mean, I know they're probably not for everybody because it's legitimately like 2 people talking, and there's not it's just kind of the comedy of them playing off one another. But I think that simplicity allows it to kind of sustain itself for multiple films because it's like they're not trying to like recreate some insane type of concept like you have with most comedies, so it actually works compared to most comedy sequels.
Another film that didn't come up during the discussion from A24, and A24 seems to be doing a lot of interesting films, but Good Time with Robert Pattinson, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Barkat Abdi. That may be interesting, as well as, like you mentioned during the time, Logan Lucky from Steven Soderbergh. Interesting cast there, Channing Tatum, Michael Shannon, Adam Driver, Daniel Craig. So interested to see what Soderbergh does with that one. And then we're finally getting Tulip Fever like 2 years after it was supposed to come out, starring Judi Dench, Alicia Vikander, Dane DeHaan, Christoph Waltz. So that could be an interesting, smaller one to look out for. But there is some weird ones coming out, too. I mean, we're getting a film where Luke Hemsworth is playing Wild Bill Hickok.
The ugly Hemsworth strikes again.
With Chris Christopherson, Trace Adkins, and Bruce Dern. I don't know what to make of that one in any way, shape, or form. You guys talked about some of the other weird ones, Undercover Grandpa, excuse me. To the Bone, a film starring Keanu Reeves. That's always a big-time hit or miss when he's behind the film. The old guys reuniting in Blind, Alec Baldwin, Demi Moore, and Dylan McDermott. I don't know. I've heard some very mixed things on Lady Macbeth as well. So it's an interesting slate of films, but there's probably a little bit of something for everybody somewhere along the way. Like Dan was saying, a big variety of different types of films. I think the only thing that you're lacking during this 2 months is an animated film worth anything. So maybe Leap will surprise, but I don't think, with the Emoji Movie and I think that's about the only, and the Nut Job too, there's not a lot to look out for if you're a fan of animated films. So that is the films coming out in July and August, and those are our predictions. You'll have to let us know what you think of our predictions or what you're looking forward to the most by going to the website, www.geekcastradio.com, finding the episode post, and just making a comment there and let us know what your thoughts are. You can also leave us an iTunes review and get entered into our video game contest where you could win a 6-pack of movies. Just leave us an iTunes review. It's that simple, and you're automatically entered. You can also interact with us on Twitter, social media, if you want to directly get involved in a conversation or ask us a question. You can do that to the show in general at Cinema Geekcast, but you can also tweet to us individually. Amanda, how do they do that for you?
You can find me at Hard Candy Mandy Eyes, no eyes.
You can tweet to me at Optimus Solo. Dan, what about you?
I'm at Movie Revolt.
And Matt?
At Fridley Scent.
All right, so that's it for the predictions. Also be on the lookout for some future episodes coming out We are down to basically the last episode for the Miyazaki Spotlight, and then we're going to open up the polls for you to vote on our next director that we do a retrospective on. So definitely look out for the very next episode, because that's where the information will be for you to vote to help shape the future of Cinema Geeks and who we're going to tackle next. And also stay tuned for more video game film spotlight reviews as we kind of make our way through the last third of the video game films, I believe is about where we're at. And also, the other series that we have going on, we're down to our final top 20 films of all time being released. So 2 more episodes in that series to go. So keep on the lookout for all of those things, as well as hopefully some movie reviews coming out for some of the big films, possibly Spider-Man Homecoming, maybe War for the Planet of the Apes, 2 big ones coming out soon that we'll hopefully be able to review in some way, shape, or form. And last but not least, stay on the lookout at the website as we give our movie roundups each month. We'll be putting out the June roundup with all of our thoughts on any films that we've seen during the month of June, and be on the lookout every month as we give you more thoughts on all the films we've seen. But that's it for us for this week of the Cinema Geeks. Tune in next week for another chance to listen to more from the Cinema Geeks.